Hello, welcome to the series where I show you what I am doing to try and become a web developer. My name's Craig and this is week 22. It's been a pretty good week and a lot more consistent with my time. There were a few times where I did struggle to concentrate, but I tried to push through it as best I could. This week I started the intermediate HTML CSS path on the Odin Project, done a few CSS battles and code wars. I created a React app, improved upon a few projects from the previous week, and I was looking into Sass, README, and Git commit statements to try and improve my documentation. Let's dive in to see how much time I've spent on web development this week. Total time this week is 24 hours and 20 minutes, and that's split up into 11 hours 24 tutorials and 13 hours for projects. A lot better than my previous week. I'm up about 4 hours, which is a huge improvement. What have I been learning this week? Let's kick off with the Odin project. So I started the JavaScript path, very excited, and I've actually completed the intermediate HTML concepts and I've started the intermediate CSS concepts. Now I'm in two minds about this, really. A lot of the concepts covered so far are things I'm aware of because of either other courses or videos. Generally they're quite a good overview, but I do think there should be more practice or more examples, something where you can get a bit hands-on. There was a lot of reading, which when I was doing like a few hours at a time, got a little bit mind-numbing. But generally the information's very good. There's a few things that I really enjoyed, and that was like the tables. A lot of videos and courses now don't really touch on tables too much. They think they're a bit outdated, but they are a brilliant way of showing data. So things like scope was introduced, and I've never heard of scope. That was pretty good. And just generally improving on my tables. One section I was very disappointed with was the SVGs. I still don't understand them. There wasn't really any kind of practical examples. I think that's because you've got to create SVGs in other programs. I just really struggle to get my head around them. I'm hoping that later on in the course there's a little bit more about them. I really wanted to look into Git commit statements, README files, and Sass this week, just to kind of, for the first to improve my documentation, and this would help with collaborations. And with Sass, I just wanted to really learn how to set it up properly, the kind of folder structure and everything like that. So in terms of Git, a lot of the videos were very consistent with Git, saying there's about 7 points that should kind of be followed. The first one is that the subject or the title should be separate from the body by a line. The subject or title should be capitalized. The subject or title should be less than 50 characters. It should use the imperative, like commanding words, add, rather than adding or added. The body should be wrapped at about 72 characters, and that's a hard wrap, so hit enter. You have to use a code editor or some kind of nano in the terminal. And finally, use the body to explain why and what rather than how. I think these are really good steps to follow. It's just going to take a little bit of time and practice to really get them cemented in my knowledge. Secondly, with README files, I just wanted to improve my documentation, understand what should be going in the README files, how to actually write markup. I don't really know it that well. So I watched a few videos on that explaining it. The general, like what should be going in the markup was very varied depending on the topic, and it's something I need to look into a little bit more and put into practice a little bit more. I have updated a README file on my GitHub page, which shows the stats, and I'll be showing that later on the computer. So with Sass, I'm fairly comfortable with variables and nesting. Could probably use a little bit more work with mixins, but I'm generally okay with Sass. It is the setting up and the kind of organization of the Sass folders which I struggle with. And that's what I wanted to get out of looking at it this week. Bit mixed. Most of the videos were talking about, how to use it rather than folder structures and best practices. There was a few. Two that stick into my mind were from Kevin Powell. One, he set up Sass using Parcel, which was very interesting. And the second one, he talked more about using the @use statement rather than @import, because @import is getting phased out. I think the lack of, Sass, README files, and Git really do show that I'm self-taught and could possibly make it difficult to integrate into a team. And that's why I really want to improve on it over the next few weeks. And then finally, I've got the main course, another 2.5 hours I've done working through that. Really starting to enjoy it. It's starting to come together a little bit. I'm still struggling with the teacher, but I am enjoying the course overall. It's really fun. Made loads of React components this week. Let's dive over the computer and see what I've been building. So there's a few things to go over on the computer. I've updated the goal list that I started last week just to add the local storage. I reworked the calculator from the Odin project just to handle the negatives that I came up in the last video. I've also got a React app to go through and 2 front-end mentor challenges. So let's start with the to-do list. I've already got a few things in the local storage just to show that it's working. Pretty straightforward. Quite happy. It was very simple to add the local storage in there. I haven't added a clear button because you can just double click on one of the goals and it will delete it. So if I refresh that, they're no longer there. And on load, it will look to see if there's local storage, and if there is, it will loop through and add them to the UL. These are just 2 kind of Sass files that were created from watching the video courses, one by Kevin Powell and the other one by the Dev Ed. A little bit gaudy, this color scheme, but it was interesting. The Dev Ed one was more about using Sass rather than setting it up, and the Kevin Powell one was the one using Parcel, so that was quite interesting. 2 front-end mentor challenges. The first one was like a newbie challenge. Let's just load that one up. I didn't create a Figma file because it was rather straightforward, but it was good practice just to use some HTML and CSS. Nothing really of note here apart from the fact that when it's smaller than 500, I've got a little bit of a media query just to make sure there's a little bit of margin from the top. The second challenge was a lot more involved. This was a whole landing page which changed for mobile. This is the page, built it for mobile first. So we'll go down to mobile. Maybe a little bit of misalignment there. I could probably use a little bit of padding. Overall, it's not too bad. Can't remember if I used this as a mask. Yes, I used this SVG down the bottom as a mask rather than an image or anything, because in the original SVG, go to the top, it should be this original. It's got a pink speech bubble and black text, and I needed white all around. So yeah, I just used the mask there. The icons are from Font Awesome here, and they're provided for these ones. There is a hover state on the icons, which the Facebook one always looks a bit dodgy. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. Overall, it doesn't look too bad there. For desktop, increase the size of the logo. There's a hover state for this button, a hover state for this button. These are now all 2-column grids. Looking maybe a little bit too squashed or too wide. I'm not too sure about that. It just doesn't look quite right in my mind. Here's the rework of the calculator. So the issue, it took a little bit of time to figure it out and to get it working how I wanted it. So in the original project, when you do an operator like twice in a row, so 5 plus 5, it needs to calculate this 5 plus 5 first, and then it will do the next one. Although I didn't like how I had to add that string on the end. I might have to look into that one. But the issue I had, I was using regex to split up the operators. And if there was more than 2, I believe it was, it would, calculate it first and then append the last one. Obviously, when there was a negative in front of a number, that was counting as an operator. It was splitting it up and it wasn't taking the first number because there wasn't a first number. But now, it checks for that negative and it works quite nicely. One thing that doesn't work, I can't times by negative number because it looks if an operator has been pressed twice, like in a row, and it will replace it with the most recent one. This is just the table exercise I followed through from the MDN documentation. Quite interesting, a lot of like column span, row span, using scope as I mentioned earlier. It was a good use of tables and good practice. Then the final thing to show is just this React app that I've been working on. I've got it running locally. Basically, these are just some quick exercises that I do. So I foam roll pretty much daily, and I've got like abs and knee strengthening and stretches. So these are all link elements, and they update accordingly, which is pretty good. You can tell that the URL is changing. I finally built an interval timer that works. I always seem to struggle building interval timers. I don't know why. And then looking through some of the Stack Overflow posts recently, it finally clicked. I just needed to set a timeout and call the function again. So it works okay. I think there's a little bit of an issue with the timers, and it lags a little. So you can tell that it lagged slightly, and then it'll lag a little bit, go to rest. So it needs a little bit more tweaking, but overall I'm quite happy that I actually have an interval timer of some sorts working. And that's also an option on this homepage, just to use an interval timer. I haven't got any kind of audio or visual signals that it's really between work and rest. So that needs tweaking again. I'll probably add a buzzer, and maybe, I'll probably turn the body green when you're working and orange when you're resting. I also think it'll be a good idea to add another section where I can add custom exercises, which are stored in local storage. So things like if I wanted to do a HIIT workout, I could say which HIIT exercises I wanted to do and add them there. I really like this little kind of curve I've got going on there. A slight issue there, I think, if I zoom in quite a bit. You can tell it's not perfect. Like I say, there's an issue there. And this is a before and after element using the clip path and then background fill it white. So it probably just needs tweaking the clip path. Then the only other things to talk about is the CSS battles. I think I did 4 battles this week just to practice my CSS skills there. Again, not brilliant, but it is good practice just to get in the habit of. I'm not purposefully writing bad code to get a better score. I'm just trying to write better code. And then I'm using Code Wars to practice JavaScript. This is quite a good site. And then finally, I almost forgot about this, is the GitHub README page. So I added a little bit here, some technologies that I use. These are cards, I believe. My stats, so how many commits I've done, and my technologies that I use. I thought that was pretty cool to add in. That is everything for week 22. Generally, I'm really happy with the week. I also applied for 2 jobs and got a phone call from a recruiter just asking for more information. So I'm quite happy about that. I just wish I'd hear more from the other jobs I've already applied for. Next week, I want to work more on the Odin project, do 2 to 3 days of the intermediate HTML CSS section, and if I've got enough time, move on to the JavaScript part. I'll probably not do a front-end mentor challenge, but work instead on building more of the React app that I started this week. And again, I want to improve my time steadily, aim for another 30 minutes to an hour on top of what I've done this week. Links to all the resources will be down below. And as always, I'd greatly appreciate your thoughts and advice. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more, then please subscribe. I hope you all have a good day. I'll catch you later.